I'm going to do first a quick presentation about this implementation that I'm going to show today. I will show the agenda. I will also show for whom is it intended for whom not, and some of the requirements that we have. And finally, we will get hands on it to deploy it live. Okay, so um, this is the as I mentioned, for whom it is intended for whom it is not, the tools that we're going to use. Well, I bet if you are here, probably you already know what's Sonarqube and what it is intended for. Just to make a quick summary, Sonarqube is a static code analysis tool. It will help you, and it will show you a lot of issues that you may find or encounter during the development phase. Also about vulnerabilities that your code may have, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the implementation that we're going to show today, it is Sonarqube with a plugin, and this plugin is the one that will allow you to do the analysis of the different branches that you're going to have. Okay, so for whom is this intended for? So this is intended for teams who have an Azure subscription, because we are going to deploy everything in Azure. Probably projects for short mid duration, because this implementation, or at least the maintenance of Sonarqube, it takes not a big effort, but it's a little bit tricky, let's say. The updates you will need to manage manually. As you are going to see that we are going to use a Docker container, and so on and so forth. This is intended for projects that are hosted at on-premises, and by on-premises I mean by a project that has Azure DevOps project that has the ability to generate service connections, or at least permissions to install plugins and generate the connections that I mentioned. And projects also that are not willing to use third-party services. And by third-party services, I mean that, for example, Sonarqube has its own software as a service platform, which is called Sonar Cloud, and the implementation is pretty much straightforward. Okay. So, just also I want to mention that all the solutions that we're going to use today here are open source, and by that I mean Sonarqube is open source, Terraform is open source, maybe Azure Pipelines not. But yeah, all right. So for whom it is not intended for? This is not intended for teams or projects that use another cloud vendor, because the configuration that we're going to show today is based mostly in Azure. For long-term projects in which you have to work a lot in maintaining these pieces, and for projects that can use these third-party services, as I mentioned, this Sonar Cloud approach probably is maybe a better and maybe even cheaper approach for analyzing your projects. Okay, so what do we need? We will need an Azure subscription in which we can deploy the resources, and by the resources I mean the Sonarqube instance. The solution that I'm going to show today, it's going to deploy a virtual machine with containers, and those containers will be the Sonarqube instance and the database. Probably for a more productive approach, you will need to have a database like a platform as a service from Azure, or for any cloud vendor that you're going to have. You're going to need also a Azure command line interface so that we can connect to our Azure subscription. We're going to need Terraform, because Terraform is the tool that will provide us the environment so that we can codify this infrastructure and in the end deployment. And you will need to have an Azure DevOps instance with enough rights, as I mentioned, to install plugins. And by these plugins, we are going to need the Sonarqube plugin, And it would be nice to have the replace tokens plugin, but well, this is not mandatory and at this point, okay? So what is Azure Pipelines? Well, we have a project at Ernie that I'm going to show afterwards in which we have a repository that will help all the jobs and templates that we want to have for standardizing the continuous integration and continuous deployment phases. So the goal that we have here is have these templates and that every project that we use or that we held at Ernie premises at Azure DevOps Ernie premises can extend from it. So that the goal is that with this standardization, we are providing a standard build definition for the different project types, no matter if we are building libraries, containers, or web projects. And these definitions are included in Git in a transactional system so that we ensure that nobody can change anything without having the proper traceability, okay? Terraform. Well, Terraform is a code, it's a tool that generates infrastructure as a code. It has its own syntax. And the benefits that we have using Terraform is that we can write it once and deploy it many times. The recipe that I'm going to show afterwards, it's a recipe that we can deploy in one subscription, in another for one project. We can have a Sonarqube instance for many projects, and this code serves or can be used for any of them, okay? It also serves as disaster recovery, so anytime we have infrastructure or platform as a service resources that we have in our cloud environment, if we have the infrastructure as code, we will be able or will have the ability to recover it pretty fast, okay? And also it's really useful in any case we want to use ephemeral environments, I don't know, maybe for development, for testing, in which we just want to start this environment, run the automatic testing that we have, I don't know, maybe integration tests or anything you want to run at, and you can remove it just at the end of it, okay? So how are we going to use it? How are we going to do this? Well, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy the resources in Azure. Then I will follow some guidelines that we have for integrating in with Azure DevOps. And at the end, I have a repository that I created for testing purposes in which we are going to create a code smell snippet. And we're going to see that this gets integrated and the pull request gets decorated with the Sonarqube message saying or providing a comment saying that that this needs to be fixed. Okay. Okay. So let's go for it. This is the repository in which we have our infrastructure. Currently, what we have here are few resources like an Azure Container Registry. We have also a SQL database. We have the Sonarqube, which is the one that we're going to deploy, and we have a standard Azure App Service. Okay, of course, in this repository, what we aim to have are just templating. So it's just for testing purposes currently. If you want to deploy in your own project, probably you will need to configure the different environment variables that each of the modules has. So, well, this is in a linear way, and what I mean by that is that we have everything under this modules folder, but this can be changed. And what I mean by that is that you can create modules that contains several different resources. So for example, if we want to have a development environment, and in this development environment we have an app service, Sonarqube, and a SQL database, for example, we can put all together in a folder that it can be called dev. and we can have these modules in a separate folder, and we can extend from this folder into the other one so that we do not repeat all the code that we have here. Okay, so let's go for it. So first thing that I'm gonna do is I'll do the login, and this will prompt me to connect to my Azure instance. Now I got logged in, and now what I need to do is to set the subscription that I want to use. That will be this one here. Okay. So now that I set the subscription, what I need to do is I need to go and browse the folder, well, that I'm currently are here, in modules Sonarqube, and here what we have are the different variables that we're going to use. We're going to have the location here in the Terraform bars, the admin username of the virtual machine, because this is going to be deployed in a virtual machine, and this is the domain name. And by the domain name, this is what it's going to be, eddsonarqube.azure, blah, 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 or the fully qualified domain name that Azure provides, okay? And in variables, we have, well, some tagging, the domain name, and so on, okay? So this is something that you can configure by your own. First, you need to modify this, and then you can start the deployment. So the first step that we are doing is the initialization. And within this initialization step, Terraform, what it's doing is downloading all the modules and plugins that are needed for this deployment. Okay. So as you see, it downloads the modules for HashiCorp, for TLS, for Azure RM, which is the resource management for Azure, and then everything is ready. So the second step that we're gonna do is to validate our templates. Okay. So with this, what we are doing is validating that the code that we have generated works properly. Okay, so I haven't showed you what we have in here in the main, but here we have several things, right? In the main TF, which is this HCL syntax that Terraform provide, we have a lot of things. First, we have the provider, in which we choose that we are going to use Azure. We create a resource group. We create a virtual network, a subnetwork, a public IP, network security group, security rules so that we can access through SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. Network interface and network interface configurations for the subnetwork. Okay, so as you can see, we have a lot of things here. We also have a SSH key for testing purposes and for accessing. And here is the important part in which we have a template that it's a bash script that will run everything that we are going to deploy in the machine. Okay, so well, this is for testing purposes. Of course, if you are planning to deploy this at some point in a productive environment, you will need to work on managing properly the certificates. You will need to renew them. You will need to find out vulnerabilities, or for example, at least you won't be able, or you shouldn't be able to use this SSH connection or have this SSH key or the HTTP security rule, and we should just follow the HTTPS and so on and so forth. So here, as I was mentioning, in this Sonar SH is like we have the deployment script. So what we have here is a step in which we download the packages that we need, like Nginx, Python, HTTPS, certificates, curl, and so on. We download Docker, we download Docker Compose, and then what we create is a Docker Compose file in which we start all the services. Take into account that, well, as as this is an example, also we're gonna use in here raw passwords, but this can be parameterized from using the replace tokens plugin that I mentioned before, and this also the versioning can be parameterized. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is, as I mentioned, install everything, and at the end we are gonna here also set up the Nginx. And here, what we are doing are some tweaks for the VM. As Sonarqube uses Elasticsearch, there are some tweaks that needed to be done in the virtual machine. So these are some sysctls commands for the virtual machine that I didn't find a way to configure using an application service, for example. So that's why I'm deploying everything in a virtual machine. Rabosa is asking about a license of Sonarqube. Sonarqube, as far as if I'm not wrong, uses MIT license, okay, or GPL3, which is also another kind of open source license. Okay, so continuing with this, what we're gonna do is Terraform plan, and by this Terraform plan command, what it does, it's deploy the resources, or it makes like a kind of let's say dry run, I will say. Okay. So this dry run, what we'll do, it's test that all the resources that we are gonna deploy works properly, and if so, we are gonna apply all the configuration. Okay. Okay, let me just wonder if Sonarqube uses another kind of licenses. Yes, so it is LGPL3 license, which is another kind of open source licensing. Okay. So as you can see here, it tries to apply this configuration, everything works, and the different parameters that it will apply will be known after applying everything. Okay, so let's generate the resources. This will do a plan also, and then we'll confirm the deployment. Okay. This might take up to 5-10 minutes because it will do all the steps that are described here. So it might take a little bit. And during these 5-10 minutes, what I'm going to show you is the repository where, okay, let's confirm this. So as you can see, it's creating everything. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, here we are using the Sonarqube Community Edition, which is the open source one, and then the plugin, which is also the open source one. Okay. So let's go to the different repositories that we have here. As I mentioned, we have this pipelines repository in which we have all the different things that we are going to integrate. We have the different folders, and we have folders for jobs, for configuration, for variables, and for templates. Well, you may think that this variables folder probably it doesn't make much sense here. And yeah, I agree that this is something that we can have here either in the pipelines repository or in your own repository. As I'm gonna show you, you'll see where it's gonna be used. So what we have here is jobs for any kind of jobs. So we have jobs for building and pushing container registry, for CS projects, for .NET projects, publish or publish web, to move results from from one place to another, for using Git version, that it's the tool that we are using for automated versioning. Okay, we have charts for Helm, which is for Kubernetes Package Manager, to install it, for NPM. So the goal of having all of these jobs is that we can, in the end, have these templates for different purposes. So, for example, if we want to build a library, a Nugget library, we first run the different jobs that we described, like Git version, Sonarqube prepare, install Nugget, Nugget restore, solution build, .NET test, copy the results, the Sonarqube analysis, and then the push of the package. Okay, and the peer one is the same, but without pushing any package. Okay, so this pull request template is aimed to be integrated within the continuous integration phase or for the pull request declaration step. Okay, so yeah. As I mentioned, we have all of these things. We also have a work in progress, which is for the deployment phase, in which we want to have the same approach for deploying to different environments. And how do we integrate this in our repository? So what we have is in these templates, we just define the repository from which we want to extend, which is this one. And then we define from where we want to take the variables. As I mentioned, in this case, I placed it here, but it may be even inside your own repository. We define the trigger policy, we define the VM agent that we're going to use, and then the different steps. Okay, so in this case, we want to build an NPM library. We just need to mention it here. Okay, so for doing this, we have a guideline, an integration guideline that I'm gonna follow, and what it describes is how do we integrate this. Okay, so let's see how I'll close now the presentation so we can focus on the code. So as we can see here, the apply has been complete. Now we will need to wait for the deployment and for the SH to run all the parameters, but probably we can see at least, yeah, the Nginx, it's up, and at some point it will start running this Sonarqube. So in the meantime, what I'm going to show you is that in this guide is described how can we do the deployment, that this is the step that we just did. And then we'll start with the integration steps. So the integration steps, we're going to create a service connection in Azure. Okay, we're going to create a token in Sonarqube so that the communication between Azure DevOps and Sonarqube works. And then we will need to configure yet some stuff in the Sonarqube instance so that we can do the pull request declaration. And by pull request declaration is that when we have these pipelines as code, every time we create a pull request, it gets a notification of the comment, okay, of the code as well. Sorry. So here what I created is this repository in which we have the two pipelines, one for the pull request and one for the continuous integration. And as you can see, it has exactly what I mentioned before. We extend from this repository, we have the variables, we have the pull, and we have the different steps. In this case, we build the pull request, and we have the test project, which is the one that will run the unit tests. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so Sonarqube is up. Initially, what we are gonna have here is the admin bundle of username and password that we're gonna change just right by now. Okay, it's taking a little bit. And also what we are gonna do here, it's we are gonna create pipelines. As I mentioned, one for the pull request and one for the continuous integration. And the one for the continuous integration, it contains also already the place where it wants to push the packages here, okay? Which is something that I did previously, created the NuGet feed. So let's see if this works now. Okay, yeah, it's working. So I'll just log in here. This will ask me to change the password. So let's do it. Okay, so now we have our Sonarqube instance already up. Okay. Now we're gonna follow the different steps that we have here described. So first thing that we're gonna do is generate a new token for integrating it with Azure DevOps. Okay. So we will follow here. We'll just create the token with the name that we mentioned here. We generate it and we have it. Okay. So now with the token, what we're going to do is go to our DevOps instance, to my project, setting admin services, and create a service connection. As this is something that I'm here already, I'm going to go to settings, service connections, and create a new service connections. Here within this list, we are going to choose the Sonarqube. This is something that I can choose already because I have the plugin installed. Okay. So now what I'm gonna write here is the token that I copied. I'm gonna copy the fully qualified domain name, which is the URL of the server. We will use the service connection name that I have here in the variables, which is EDD Sonarqube, and I'm not gonna add any description now. So, okay, we have the service connection created, so we are gonna move forward. This is something that we did, and now we need to do some additional configuration at Sonarqube. I think I'll keep this here in the side, and I will be following. I think might be easier. Oops. Okay. So now if we click here, we are gonna go to admin settings and now to general server base URL. We're gonna copy it, which is base URL here. Okay. And save it. Why do we need this? Because by default, Sonarqube is configured using localhost, and if we do not change this, at some point when you configure the connection with Azure DevOps, it won't be able to connect back to the Sonarqube instance, and it will redirect everything to localhost. Okay. Now what I need to do is to create a PAT token. Okay, for full code access. So I'm gonna do this. What I need to do is full access code. I'll call it Twitch Twitch token. This will expire tomorrow. And now with this token, what we're gonna do is to go to the to this URL, which is here. Create a configuration for Azure DevOps. This can be Azure DevOps. The Azure DevOps URL is this, and I'm gonna save it. Okay. So as we can see, the configuration is valid. The integration works, and we can check the configuration, and we can check that it's valid. Okay. So now it's time to configure this in our repository. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we have already the templates, as I mentioned here, not these ones, but in the repository, which are here. Okay, and what we are gonna do now is to create the continuous integration and the pull request pipelines. Okay, and we can find it here, the documentation. So we're gonna need to follow this. Okay. The steps, we're gonna create one for the continuous integration, and we're gonna create one for the pull request. I will keep this in one side for a moment. So I will be following everything here in the configuration. Okay. So now that we have the files in the repository, I'm gonna create a new pipeline, and this pipeline will be, I'll be using the classic editor. Okay. Now here, what I'm gonna choose is the repository that we're gonna do for the sampling, and we're gonna use this YAML file, okay, which is inside. Oh, yeah. So for example, let's create the CA one first. Now here we're gonna do some tweaks. First we're gonna do is we're gonna rename this. Well, let's keep it like this. Yeah, I don't mind. Here, we're gonna clean the sources, just in any case. I don't want to have anything or any build stuff inside the build agent. Okay. So all build directories. Now we're gonna tag on success. Okay. So here what we're gonna use is the build number. Okay, for the tagging, and then we're gonna save and queue. Okay. So this, what we'll do, it will create a trigger of the CI, and it will follow the steps that were described in the pipelines repository. Okay, so this will start loading here. As you can see, it's downloading the different tasks from the command line. I mean, inside the host, and you see we have already here all the different steps that we have defined in the pipelines repository. So here we are using Git versioning, so it does an automatic versioning of the repository. It does the Sonarqube prepare, does the NuGet installer, the restore, and it will follow all the different steps. Okay, so now we're gonna, in the meantime, we're gonna create the pipeline for the pull request. Okay, so we're gonna follow a similar step in which we're gonna use the classic editor. we are gonna choose the repository from master branch. We're gonna use the YAML. And we're gonna rename this as the PR, okay? And we're gonna choose the PR YAML. So in here, we need to do something similar. We're gonna clean the sources, all build directories on success, and we are not gonna trigger this, okay? So we are just going to save it. Why? This is important because what happens is that Sonarqube needs to have first the first run from the CI, okay? Otherwise, it will fail. So first, if we don't run this CI and we run the PR, we're going to have an issue because the repository won't exist yet in Sonarqube, right? So we'll need to wait to run this first initial CI. Well, as you can see here, it already exists. And it is really important, this step, that you run first the CI rather than the pull request. So you need to follow this process. So as you can see, it did the analysis already. I mean, this repository have 25 minutes of technical depth, 2 code smells, and 0% code coverage with 2 unit tests. Okay, well, as it is just for testing purposes, I'm not ashamed of it. So, okay, now we have both pipelines here, okay? So the next step now that we're gonna do, oops, did I? Okay. Didn't I just save it? Damn it, okay. Sorry for that. I'll create the pull request one again because seems that I haven't saved it. Okay. I will call it the peer one. Then I will choose the path again. Then I will do the cleaning, all build directories, tag on success, and save. Save. Okay. Isn't this weird? Okay. Okay, it's created. Okay, but it doesn't it doesn't have any runs yet. That's why I cannot see it here. Okay. My bad. Good. So now, what I'm gonna do is create a pull request. Okay. So this pull request, what we'll do, it's let me think. This pull request, yes. What I'm gonna do here is that I have a branch in which I created this code smell, which is to initialize a variable that is never used, and I'll push this. Okay, so let me just push the changes. Now that I did push it, I'll go to the repository. That it's here. And now I have the ability to create a code smell. Let me just think of if I need to do something else. And I think I still need to go to repositories and then go to branches. And here, what I need to do is go to the main branch, go to branch policies, and in the branch policy, I need to have this build validation, okay? But I'm not really sure if this, okay. What I need to choose here is the pull request, okay? So I will leave the path filter empty. I will leave the trigger as automatic. I will leave it as required. And yeah, I will keep it as it is. So now that I have this, the build validation, what I'm gonna do is to create a pull request, and it should trigger the run, and within this run, we should be able to have the coverage and the status of the build, and the code smell should place here a message if I did everything well. So so let's check the pipeline. So this is running again. It's initializing. And let's wait for it. I'm reading the chat here. If you have any questions till now, feel free to write it in the chat. I'll be glad to answer. The goal that we have is when we have this a little bit more mature, make also not just the pipelines repository, but also the guidelines that we're creating available and open source in GitHub. So yeah, stay tuned, because if you are interested in this, it should be available soon there. Okay. So yeah, let's wait for it. This should be a bit faster than the other CI, as we are not pushing the package anywhere. So now it's building the solution. All right. That's running the analysis. Will be a huge fail if it doesn't work now, right? All right, good. So it seems that it worked. Now, if we go to the pull request, we choose the right repository, and we go here. Oops. So why did it succeed? Okay. Yes. So as we can see here, the new code smell is here, but it didn't push the change into the pull request, which is weird. So I may missed a step. We have the issue here in Sonarqube. As you can see, it detects that you're having a a variable that is not required. Okay. So I may have missed some Sonarqube configuration. So yes, that's it. There was one step missing. Let's see if I can fix it. Okay. So we go here, project settings, general settings. We have here the pull request decoration. Okay. We had to choose this and this. Now save, and let's hope now it works. I will trigger it again, okay? And if it doesn't work, maybe I will create a new one. Abandon this one just to make sure that the pull request decoration works. How did you do that if you use it in GitHub? Well, GitHub has GitHub Actions, and these GitHub Actions, it's a different work than Azure DevOps, but you can use the host agents, as if I'm not wrong, within GitHub also, and integrate it with the Azure DevOps pipelines. So the goal is to have probably a mirrored repository from GitHub to Azure DevOps so that we can maintain this code there, right? But the goal is to have it probably in Azure DevOps instances. So let's see now. Okay, now we have it. So as you can see here, we have a comment that you need to resolve within the pull request context, which is way easier than having to go to Sonarqube, analyzing the issues, and well, let's say that this process is automated. So anytime something or a bug or anything is introduced within a pull request, you will be able to solve it in this screen and during the review process. Okay, so that's it. We have 8 minutes left. I don't know if you want to drop any question here in the chat or anything, uncertainty, issue, or something that you would like to share here in the chat. I will be glad to answer or help. No questions so far? Okay. So that's it. Hope it was useful for you. Well, as I said, this is something that we're gonna make open source soon. So if you are interested in this work, make sure you follow our channels like Instagram, LinkedIn, and anything related to Ernie. So thank you everyone for attending, and wish you a nice day to everyone. See you. Bye bye.